So next we have two talks that focus on privacy in public, in a sense, the myriad ways that just walking down an ordinary city street, we are being observed in ways we may not recognize, and also the ways existing networks of surveillance, like closed-circuit cameras, can be transformed in fairly deep ways by existing infrastructure becoming a platform for new methods of monitoring. So the first of these is going to be an examination of camera networks for facial recognition surveillance from Jake LaPerouse of the Project on Government Oversight.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm Jake LaPerouse. I'm a senior counsel at the Constitution Project at POGO, where I focus on surveillance issues, and I'm really excited to be talking about facial recognition and a specific aspect of facial recognition, how cameras and various aspects can empower and grow facial recognition surveillance into dragnets. So as just a quick start about facial recognition surveillance itself, this is no longer a sci-fi technology of Minority Report that we will see in the distant future. It is happening now. The FBI conducts over 4,000 facial recognition searches every month on average. A quarter of all state and local police departments have the ability to conduct facial recognition scans as well. Customs and Border Protection has a biometric exit program that uses facial recognition for outgoing flights. They are planning to spread this to airports in general, as well as seaports and land ports across the country. And ICE is looking to buy facial recognition technology as well. So that is the state of facial recognition. It is a very live and real surveillance threat. Now, facial recognition depends on three key factors to be a powerful force for surveillance. First, you need a database of photos that are identified with people. The FBI has that. They have about half of all American adults in a photo database. You need very powerful software technology that can scan across hundreds of millions of photos and scan faces rapidly. Lots of companies are developing this technology. The government is as well. And then third, what I really want to focus on is you need a network of cameras that you can tap into and that you can use to see people's faces everywhere all the time. Now, there are four areas where this you have the potential to build these camera networks. First, government surveillance cameras, CCTV. Second, police body cameras. Third, privately owned security cameras. And last, social media photo databases. So let's start first with government surveillance programs, CCTV programs. About a decade ago, then Chicago Mayor Richard Daley said that he expected one day we would have a police camera basically on every corner. I want you to keep that quote in mind as we talk more and more about CCTV in American cities. But first, let's go to where we truly have a CCTV photo dragnet and where it seems that we've achieved Big Brother status, and that is in China. China is by far the most powerful network of government surveillance cameras that we can see in the world. The country has an estimated 200 million government-run surveillance cameras throughout the country, and the effects of this are quite profound. If you look at cities, these networks are incredibly dense and incredibly powerful. For example, Beijing maintains over 46,000 CCTV cameras that blanket the city. State media and police in Beijing boast that this network allows them to have 100% coverage of the city and see everything that is going on all the time. Now, this can have really powerful impacts for facial recognition. So, for example, recently a BBC reporter asked to test this system. He went to a city of 3.5 million people, gave his photo to the government to input into a system, and asked them to find him. Using their cameras and their systems, the automated facial recognition software tracked him down and found him throughout that entire city of 3.5 million people in a mere 7 minutes. So that is surveillance cameras at its peak, but CCTV is also in America to a strong degree. It's already being instituted in large cities such as New York, Chicago, Washington, and Los Angeles. In New York, there is a CCTV network hub This is called the domain awareness system. The way it works is that you have all cameras networked into a centralized hub that can be subject to real-time viewing, analysis, and other tools. Facial recognition could become one of those in the future. Oakland considered building its own domain awareness hub. This would have hooked up cameras all across the city used by government, involving everything from Port Authority to those on police cars to cameras outside schools. Smaller cities such as St. Louis and New Orleans also have mass CCTV networks and centralized hubs that they're used to watch. But the city with the largest, by far, CCTV network in the United States is Chicago. Chicago is the closest to achieving Big Brother stats in America. Right now, Chicago maintains a police surveillance network of cameras that is over 30,000 total cameras in the city. This in some ways actually surpasses the level of surveillance dragnet that you'll see in China. Although 30,000 cameras in Chicago is less than the total 46,000 in Beijing, if you look at area density for cameras, the 128 cameras per square mile on an average in Chicago is far, far higher than that in the Beijing dragnet that covered 100% of the population. Now, this can have really powerful effects for facial recognition, and it's starting to in America. We're seeing this primarily first in Orlando. Orlando's currently running a pilot program with Amazon's real-time recognition, facial recognition program. The way this system works is that you have cameras scanning throughout the city. They will try to scan faces, find people, identify them, and then flag any persons of interest, whatever persons of interest means. Not sure. So that is government CCTV. Next, I want to look at police body cameras. This is probably the area of greatest risk in terms of establishing video surveillance dragnets in the United States. And the simple reason for that is that body cameras are becoming incredibly popular in America and in American police departments. Axon, America's largest body camera producer in the United States, has systems already in over half of American largest cities. This isn't a huge surprise because Axon offers their body cameras to police departments for free, so long as you then use Axon's video storage system. Studies from recent years of police departments indicate that 97% of the largest police departments in America all either have body camera programs in place, are in pilot and testing stages, or if they don't have them yet, are planning to build them in the future. So this really is going to be a universal phenomenon of police wearing body cameras, and that being a common thing we will see on our streets as beat cops walk by. Now, why is this a really, really big deal for a proliferation of government surveillance cameras? It's because cities have lots of police in them. On average, localities have between 16 and 24 police officers for every 10,000 residents. When you look at big cities, this amount gets much higher. Plenty of cities have as many as 40 officers for every 10,000 residents or more. DC's over 50. If you look at area density, you can also see that some cities are very populated with police officers. For example, 10 different cities have over 20 police officers per square mile. Topping the list is New York City, which has well over 100 police officers per every square mile. Now, in terms of facial recognition, we have actually seen a little bit of progress here. Axon recently backtracked on a long-term plan to put facial recognition in its body cameras. They acknowledge the fact that this tech really, in a lot of ways, is very flawed, very prone to misidentification. So they scrapped plans that might have happened as soon as this year to put facial recognition in its system. But not all vendors are taking that cautious approach. Some are charging ahead with facial recognition and body cameras. And it's only a matter of time before companies like Axon are probably satisfied that it's good enough for their work and begin to institute it. After all, an Axon VP described their interest in body cameras a couple of years ago by saying that by putting facial recognition in body cameras, one day every cop in America would be RoboCop. Now, this is very worrying because while virtually all police departments are charging ahead with police body cameras, very few are setting rules and standards for facial recognition. According to a scorecard on body cameras maintained by Upturn in the Leadership Conference, basically no cities that operate body camera programs have effective rules on facial recognition. And that is many, many cities that are not acting with appropriate standards. So that's police body cameras. So next I want to talk about private surveillance cameras and capacity to build government surveillance networks from them. Now, co-opting private surveillance cameras is similar to CCTV. It's another way that government could potentially build out video surveillance networks, but do so with very little work, without the infrastructure, and at a fraction of the cost. We may not have the 200 million surveillance cameras that China does, but America does have over 30 million privately owned security cameras throughout the country. So given the potential to simply tap into these instead of building your own cameras, it's no surprise that government may want to turn this into this. By the way, as a quick aside, a couple of those cameras are Amazon's Ring doorbell. It's a video doorbell system. Just last night, news broke that Amazon had patented technology to build facial recognition into those doorbells and connect it to police networks and notify them whenever anyone suspicious came up. So another fun innovation from Amazon. Now, police departments are not just thinking about this idea. They are proactively soliciting owners of private security cameras, asking for registration of security cameras, and asking for them to engage in formal agreements whereby those cameras can be accessed and readily used by law enforcement in video surveillance networks. So I mentioned New York before, and the domain awareness system that they have there that allows real-time streaming of video cameras. Of the 6,000 cameras that are connected to New York's network, 2/3 are actually privately owned cameras that have agreements that allow the New York Police Department to access and use them. Washington, D.C. and a lot of other cities actually offer incentives to try to get people to hook up their surveillance cameras into police networks. So here, for example, is D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser saying, please purchase security cameras, please connect them to our networks, we will pay you to do this. Excellent use of emojis, Mayor Bowser. So that is privately owned security cameras. Again, in terms of effect, it's very similar to government CCTV. It's a network of stable cameras that could eventually provide a video dragnet that could be co-opted for facial recognition, but this is simply another way to build it out, and a pretty severe risk given that we don't have the option of potentially stopping government in its tracks from building these cameras. The cameras are already there. We're just worrying about potentially having law enforcement tap into them. All right, so last I want to talk about social media photos. This is a bit of a different vein in that we're not talking about cameras taking images, but rather images that are already being stockpiled. Nonetheless, social media photos are potentially the greatest risk in terms of a photo dragnet that could be used or co-opted by government for facial recognition, and that's because of the sheer size of these photo databases. We've already seen facial recognition used for social media to a limited degree by the firm Geopedia. A few years ago, they got caught and admitted that they, during protests, had run social media photos through facial recognition technology during protests in Baltimore to find individuals with any outstanding warrant and directly arrest and remove them from the crowd. Now, luckily, when this came out as a product of ACLU research, companies responded properly. They blocked and shut down Geopedia's access to their services. It's really important that social media companies continue to be vigilant on this front to limit their API to prevent photo databases from becoming a means of government surveillance and facial recognition surveillance. But I think it's also really important that companies start to think not just about data scanning and harvesting on their platforms openly through API access, but also about court orders and scanning through those means. We've seen similar things like this in the recent past. For example, a couple years ago, Yahoo received and complied with a court order asking that they scan all email content in their databases for specific bits of content that the government was looking for. It's not hard to imagine the government coming with a similar court order to someone that maintains photo databases and asking for a mass scan to find very particular face prints. So we have Google talking later today about surveillance transparency, Facebook talking about surveillance transparency. These companies maintain very large photo databases. Google has over 200 million users store photos in its cloud photo service, including 24 billion selfies. Facebook has over 350 million photos uploaded every single day. It would be really great as these companies continue to build out what are already fantastic surveillance transparency reports that are getting better all the time, to think about possibly including a warrant canary for facial recognition, so that if the government ever does come with this sort of broad excessive order saying, we want to start scanning all your photos for facial recognition purposes, we will get the heads up and be able to start acting. And with that, I kind of want to conclude by talking about what actions can we take if we start to see these activities, how should we respond? First of all, there's a lot of potential at the local level. So before I mentioned Oakland had a proposed domain awareness system that would have connected all of their government cameras into a hub. This actually was a really great success story. Oakland activists, when they found out about this, got organized, got very mad, talked a lot to their city government about it, and got it shut down. That's the sort of thing we can see in other cities if we take action. And I want to give a shout out to a great program that's going on right now, the CCOPS campaign. This is an effort to improve transparency and limit surveillance properly in cities all across the country. I'm sure as that campaign goes on, it's going to continue doing a lot of great work to limit video surveillance and limit advanced surveillance tools like facial recognition being built into cameras. On the federal level, we have a lot of potential in terms of limiting and conditioning funds. So we talked a little bit about government CCTV. A lot of funds for local government CCTV networks don't come from those localities, they come from the federal government. DOJ funds CCTV in police grants very often. For example, Orlando, which is now running a CCTV real-time facial recognition network, originally received funds for CCTV from the Department of Justice. It would be great if in the future, when DOJ handed out funds for CCTV surveillance, video surveillance networks, they said, you cannot use this for facial recognition, or set really strict guidelines and limits on how it could be used. DHS funds surveillance cameras for cities on a large degree as well. Again, this is another opportunity where setting strict rules, guidelines, and limits could be a very effective way from stopping these video surveillance networks from being turned into mass facial recognition, location tracking, and scanning networks. And finally, the Department of Justice also issues grants in tens of millions of dollars every year for police body cameras. But again, we do not see virtually any departments putting in good rules for facial recognition on body cameras. It would be a vast improvement if, when DOJ was handing out its grants for body cameras, they said, you need to put in effective rules and guidelines and limits to protect privacy before we give you all this money. So those are some actions we should take. I do think it is very important that we take now, because we are very quickly approaching the point where we're all going to, on a daily basis, be much like that BBC reporter, tracked down through an automated computer system that is being monitored with a million little eyes. Thank you very much. You can read more about our work at pogo.org, and looking forward to the rest of the conference.
So the classic feature of surveillance that makes it a mechanism of power is that it is unequal. In the Jeremy Bentham panopticon, the prisoners in this ultimate surveillance prison know that they are under potential observation. They can be seen, but can't see the viewer. So when it comes to public networks of cameras monitoring us, maybe one of the most effective things we can do in order to encourage people to react to the changes that are happening around them is to be aware of them. And so I was really fascinated by a tool that the Electronic Frontier Foundation has developed to try and help people recognize the ways in which surveillance in public is exploding around us.